started putting things together, and here all these people were being attacked, and those people are just like any other human beings. A lot of them had jobs outside of Mount Carmel. A lot of people didn't know that. David Jones, Maribel's son, was a mailman. And he had obviously an outside job, and they tied their money. They either tied 10 or 20% of their money to the church.
Dr. Dewey Millay believes the media is heavily influenced by government, almost to the point of actual control.
People who look at this have got to look at television and say, now, why are they telling me this? Is this a lie? And that will go a long way to educate the American people of knowing how to watch the news. People ask me, why watch Dan Rather? Because I like to see what he's telling the American people. Why is he telling me this? And 9 times out of 10, there's an agenda behind it. They're going to do something to us or for us in some way we're not going to be too happy about. If the American people just get smart and watch the news, they can't trust them at all. We saw what they did here at Mount Carmel. It was just incredible. We watched the press conference every day, and most generally we were found that they contradict themselves or they told an out-and-out lie.
ATF agents attempted to arrest the head of the cult, a 33-year-old man who claims to be Christ.
He's been described as a beer-drinking guitar player with 15 wives. He claims to be Jesus Christ.
They have homemade explosives, semi-automatic and automatic weapons, hand grenades, grease guns.
One of the latest reports we had was that there was nitroglycerin in ponds.
There would be absolutely no reason in the world to keep nitroglycerin down there. It's ridiculous.
I'd be careful about just filling air when there's really nothing to say, so you start using rumors.
I imagine if they hadn't taken what was given, they'd have had nothing to say.
The FBI had taken control of this scene, and media was told to pack up and move several miles away to the roadblock and out of sight of the Davidian compound. It didn't take long for the lights to start coming down and for the miles of cable to be pulled and packed up. Authorities knew we didn't want to move.
The FBI said news reporters were moved back out of concern for their safety. What about safety for this cameraman during the race riot at the Dallas Cowboys victory parade? Who's concerned for the safety of this news crew in Palestine's West Bank or this recent student uprising in Paris? How about the news crew shooting this little New World Order police action? Aren't they in danger of being shot at? No apparent concern for their safety. The excuse given by the FBI at Mount Carmel as to concern for the reporters' safety was an insult to the intelligence of the American people. The communist Chinese government did the same thing shortly before the massacre at Tiananmen Square.
In one of the interviews with the Chinese people over in Tiananmen Square after it happened, one lady was just sobbing and saying, what could we do? They had all the guns. What could anybody do? There were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people out there. And when the government rolled in the tanks, it was all over. They didn't care whether they killed those people or not. They ran all the reporters out so there wouldn't be any witnesses. Same thing that they did down in Waco. In other parts of China, all they knew was what the government was telling them. They had heard that these people in Tiananmen Square were a bunch of bad people, a bunch of revolutionaries. And as far as they knew, the government did the right thing.
We were moved back 2 miles, and I think the media should have protested that there should have been some eyes up closer. And I said this from the early beginning, that, okay, maybe they want us back there for our own safety. But, you know, when we hired out in this job, most of us hired out and knew that we're going to be facing dangerous situations from time to time. And that's our call.
Although Phil Record denies any government media control, the report of the Waco Task Force published by the Society of Professional Journalists shows that FBI agent Jeff Jamar reminded radio station KRLD that he represents the government, which licenses broadcast stations.
A license is permission from the government to do something that would otherwise be illegal.
Bob Boaz is a Christian educator and professional media observer.
The federal government's in a position to control the flow of information in this country in a way that has never existed on the face of this earth, and it's done through federal regulatory agencies. The Federal Communication Commission does control what goes out over the airways, both on radio and television. There have been instances of radio stations burning up, of licenses not being renewed, of radio stations and television stations being audited by the IRS to the point they couldn't conduct their business. And anyone in that business, I'm not in it, but I'm not stupid either, and anyone in that business that knows that if they go against government policy, Washington, D.C. policy, they're going to be in trouble.
As the stressors are continually applied to him, he does seem to retreat more and more. We are concerned that he's perhaps going through a mental decompensation and that he is, in fact, becoming more delusional.
1 month after the deadly raid, agents moved closer to the compound, but not to a resolution. Agents say Koresh has prearranged suicide pacts with followers.
The same thing happened at Jonestown in Guyana in 1978.
He has to be slain, and there has to be a sufficient number of martyrs. Those of his followers also have to be slain.
During the siege at Mount Carmel, FBI agents made repeated references to Jonestown, instilling the idea of mass suicide in the minds of the American public.
Anti-cult propaganda never changes. The medium may change, but the kinds of things that are said about
author and researcher Mac White notes that Jim Jones and David Koresh were both targets of the same accusations.
They generally tend to be accused of bizarre sexual practices. The early Christians were accused of that, as well as of incest and other things that the Roman public at that time found abhorrent. In our day, one way to quickly demonize someone in the press in such a way that they'll never be able to recover their public image and their credibility is to accuse them of being a child molester. And that was done in Koresh's case.
White has studied the Jim Jones case for many years. He believes the Jonestown tragedy was not a mass suicide.
The FBI, right after the fire, at its press conference, said that what had happened in Waco was another Jonestown. Now, by saying that, the FBI has invited us to take a closer look at Jonestown.
Jim Jones wanted absolute control over every person in that compound, and he had it. The same thing is going on right now with Koresh in the compound in Waco. You know, I see...
Ross is a deprogrammer for the Cult Awareness Network, which provided ATF officials with all those catchy phrases like child abuse, child sacrifice, illegal weapons, slavery, threats of mass destruction, and the alleged suicide pact. The history of the Cult Awareness Network, however,